on all of our channels. So that is great. We are up and running. Wonderful. So hopefully those who have been waiting for us, welcome to Temple Shir Tikvah's Seder. We were having a little bit of technical problems. Apparently the internet did not get the note that we were coming out of Egypt and we were coming out fast. So we had to let the internet catch us, but we are so delighted to be celebrating this Passover holiday with all of you. A reminder that since we are streaming to the internet, if you have concerns about your privacy, don't want your camera or your name shown, please make the choices that make you comfortable and present and able to be here with us. However you are with us, we are delighted to have you.
And how good it is to be together on this second night of Passover. Hine matov u'manayim sheverachim gam yachad. Hine matov u'manayim sheverachim gam yachad. How good it is, how sweet it is to be together on this day. How good it is, how sweet it is to be together on this day. Nei matov u'manayim sheverachim gam yachad. Hinei matov u'manayim sheverachim gam yachad. How good it is, how sweet it is to be together on this day. How good it is, how sweet it is to be together on this day. Nei matov u'manayim sheverachim gam yachad. Hinei matov u'manayim sheverachim gam yachad. We can move.
We have been in a narrow place, a pandemic prison, forced to change the way we live our lives.
Like our ancestors, we are on a journey from bondage to freedom. We long to be together to enjoy the physical company of our loved ones.
Tonight, gathered virtually, physically, spiritually, with friends, family, and community, we retell the ageless story of the Exodus from Egypt.
As we remember the trauma of this past year, may we look back with compassion and release what no longer serves us.
As we yearn for the freedom to come and go as we please, may we reach out in love and friendship to those who are struggling.
As we seek connection and strive to hold on to hope, may we be gentle with ourselves and forgiving of others.
As we do our part to help heal the world, may we remain fully present to the simple joy of being alive.
As we face whatever new challenges will arise, may we be blessed with the courage, strength, and resilience to meet them.
Amen. So as we know, the word Seder means order. We'll now chant the list of the 15 parts of the Seder in the order they would normally occur if we were all actually together in person tonight. As was the case last year in our first virtual Seder, we'll be a little creative with this order of our virtual Seder. We won't pause to eat dinner, but we'll head straight through the whole Seder so that we can enjoy dinner afterwards in our own homes. We'll now chant this order, the Seder of the Seder, using an ancient Babylonian melody. Kadesh Orchatz, Karpas Yachatz, Magid Rachza, Motzi Matzah, Maror Korech, Shulchan Orech, Safun Barech, Hallel Nirtzah.
Kadesh, remembrance, commitment, and hope. Tonight we kindle two sets of lights. The first honors millions of worldwide who have died from COVID-19 and the millions more who mourn them. In their merit and with tender hearts of care and resolve, we commit ourselves to acts of charity and loving kindness, which we will now speak aloud for our own ears to hear. If you want to use the chat function, we'd love to see some of these in the chat. With these promises to keep, we kindle this flame of memory and dedication, and we hold a moment of silence.
Remembrance, commitment, and hope. With the power of our ancestors' bravery and resilience, we now prepare to kindle the festival lights of Passover. We dedicate these flames to the light workers of this year, to doctors and nurses, researchers, food bank volunteers, essential workers, both seen and those especially who are unseen, and to every brave soul working tirelessly to help set our world free. We will light the candle lights if you have them at your home. Beth will lead us in the blessing over the Passover lights as we see this light up our screen and our community together.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu, lahadlik ner shel yom tov. Blessed are you, sovereign in all time and space, who makes us holy with connecting command and commands us to kindle the festival lights. We can turn the slide. All Jewish celebrations, from holidays to weddings, include wine or juice as a symbol of our joy. The Seder starts with wine or grape juice, and then gives us 3 more opportunities to refill our cup and drink. And tonight we'll do the full Yom Tov, the full Yantif Kiddush. This is one of Rabbi Carey's favorite melodies and moments when there's a full festival Kiddush. And I invite you to join in with me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol am, veromemanu mikol lashon, v'kidshanu b'mitzvotav, v'titen lanu Adonai Eloheinu be'ahava, moadim l'simcha, chagim uzmanim l'sasom, et yom chag hamatzot hazeh. Zeman cheruteinu mikra kodesh, zecher litziat Mitzrayim, Kivanu v'acharta ve'otanu kidashta mikol hamim u'moadei kodshecha b'simcha v'sason hinchaltanu Baruch ata Adonai mekadesh Yisrael v'hazmanim. And our first cup of wine or grape juice.
The Seder plate holds the ritual items that are discussed during the Seder. The roasted shank bone, called zeroah, commemorates the Passover lamb sacrifice made the night the ancient Hebrews fled Egypt. The maror, bitter herbs, usually horseradish, bring tears to the eyes and recall the bitterness of slavery. Haroset, the sweet salad of apples, nuts, wine, and cinnamon, represents the mortar used by the Hebrew slaves to make bricks. Karpos, the green vegetable, usually parsley, symbolizes the freshness of spring. Salt water symbolizes the tears and sweat of enslavement. The orange is a symbol of the fruitfulness and inclusion of LGBTQ+ members of the Jewish community. And the roasted egg is a symbol in many different cultures, usually signifying springtime and renewal. It also reminds us of the sacrificial offerings which were performed in the days of the temple.
So we invite you to a ritual washing of your hands. If you want to participate, you can either bring water to you to pour over your hands, or you can leave the screen now and go to where water is available in your house. This makes the suggestion that you use water that smells good. So if you have an essential oil or something you can drop in to add that beauty, that fragrance, we invite you to do so. With intention to dedicate our hands for sacred service on this Passover night, we immerse our hands, as have millions of healthcare workers and billions others around the world, trillions of times during this pandemic year. But this night is different from all other nights. And this immersion of our hands is different too. On all other nights this year, we cleanse hands for sterility and safety. On this night, we cleanse our hands for holy joy and celebration, knowing that what's on our hands really can change the world. We immerse our hands in scent-infused water to dedicate our hands and our whole selves to joyful service, and breathe deeply the sweet scent of freedom.
And now I invite you to get your parsley or your green vegetable ready. When I was growing up, writes Sharon Cohen Anisfeld, my mother would read these verses from Song of Songs each year at our Passover Seder. This will always be karpas for me, sprigs of fresh parsley dipped in the sound of my mother's voice saying, "Arise, my darling," saying, "For lo, the winter is past." Saying, no matter what bitterness life might bring, there is always the possibility of love. And where there is love, there is hope. Karpas promises that the renewal unfolding in the world around us will come just as insistently to our own lives, to the places that have frozen over in our own weary and weary hearts. Even in the darkest times and narrowest places, there is a song in our souls waiting to well up again. The entire Seder is an invitation to taste the tears and the hopes of our ancestors. And with parsley in hand, And salt water if you have it to dip it in. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri ha'adamah. We praise God, Spirit of everything, who creates the fruits of the earth.
We now invite you to participate if there are more than one person in the home where you are celebrating tonight, if you would like to, in the breaking of the middle matzah and the hiding of the half of it. That will become the afikomen, the symbol of the end of our Seder. Take the middle matzah of the 3 on your Seder plate and break it in 2. Wrap the larger piece, the afikomen, to be hidden in a napkin. As you hold up the remaining smaller piece, please join me in reading these words out loud. We now hold up this broken matzah, which so clearly can never be repaired. We eat the smaller part, while the larger half remains out of sight and out of reach for now. We begin by eating this bread of affliction, and then only after we have relived the journey through slavery and the exodus from Egypt do we eat the afikomen, the bread of our liberation. We see that liberation can come from imperfection and fragmentation. We invite you to share in our chat function what places of brokenness in the world or in your community do you feel most called to fix? What places in yourself do you wish to find new wholeness for?
As we reach the Magid section, our community storyteller, Cindy Roofka Marshall, will tell us the Passover story from one particular point of view.
Cindy, are you not able to unmute? Okay. Let's see what's happening. Try now.
Yes. Hello, everybody. Chag Sameach. So when I was thinking about telling the Exodus story this year, with looking through the lens of what we've been going through, it strikes me that perhaps the moment in the story that most aligns with where we are is when the Israelites have approached the Red Sea, but they have not yet crossed it, because we are not yet liberated from the coronavirus, but there is some hope. And I'm going to be using a technique now that is called Midrashic Storytelling. And everyone is allowed to do this. You could try it at your Seders. The idea is to take a character in the story and imagine that you are that character, that you can imagine what you're seeing and feeling. And so I'm going to be speaking in the voice of Miriam, who is Moses' sister. And so here we go. Gather, everyone, gather. We are here together, and night is falling. We can't go any further. Now, Moses has gone off. I hope he will get some counsel from God as to what our next step should be. But I am Miriam Haniviah, Miriam the prophet, and I wish to speak to you, so listen. We have created some campfires here near the water, so gather around and warm yourselves. Let the children rest in your laps. And just for a moment, even though uncertainty surrounds us, just stop and realize where we are. We are here under the open sky with no one standing over us. We walked of our own volition away from Pharaoh and our bondage. And there are hundreds of thousands of us gathering here. Now, as I look around, I see many of you are wearing masks of fear. It will be a long while before we feel safe, I know. And yet, we have each other here in this moment. And I have heard a few of you say that perhaps you are already regretting that we left Egypt. I know that at least there we had food and shelter. But I ask you, was that ever enough? Now, like all of us, we were enslaved from the time we were born. And we had those with whips standing over us. Their hearts were hardened. And they were fed lies by those in power that we were somehow less than human. We have lived a life so constricted, fearing to go from our homes, fearing even each other. And yet, here we are. You know, I was still a young girl when Pharaoh decreed that the Hebrew baby boys should be killed. My parents, Amram and Yocheved, well, they started to tell all the other couples we should all separate. We should not risk having any more children. But you see, that was when I had my vision of what was to come. I said, no, you must stay together because you will have another child and he will grow up to lead us out of this narrow place of slavery. And my parents listened to me. They did have another son. And we took care of him. And we hid him in a basket, floated him on the Nile River. And I watched as Batya, Pharaoh's daughter, drew him from the waters. And she said she would raise him as her son in the palace. Well, Yocheved, his birth mother, took Moses to nurse him and fed him and told him that he was the son of Hebrews. I think this must have torn him apart, growing up in the palace and then seeing how terribly we were mistreated. Why, once he was grown, he lashed out, and he then realized he better flee. Now, I never gave up hope that Moses would return. I know some of you did. And then, once he did return, oh, my friends, I know we have been through so much. Terrible plagues. It seemed as if the world as we knew it was falling apart. Everything was changing, the earth so out of balance. Floods, hail, ruining our crops, locusts. And then, cattle disease, and our meat infected. So many people going hungry, not enough food. And the infestations of lice and gnats and frogs and our water. So scary to think of there not being fresh water when the water turned red with blood. And darkness, the darkness of not being able to see our loved ones. And when the 10th plague finally convinced Pharaoh, when his own son, his firstborn, was killed, and Pharaoh said, "Go, get out of Egypt." Well, we all hurried. We We stumbled away from bondage. We set out on foot, carrying only what we could. Well, we did not foresee that we would come here to this place, in front of a big expanse of water, a sea. Well, we have sent scouts to see if there might be another way around, but wait, a messenger has come from the rear. It seems that they can hear that Pharaoh's armies are approaching. They hear the pounding of horses' hooves. But do not panic. We cannot go back. Do not turn around, my friends. Take each other's hands, for the dawn is coming, and in the light I see someone standing at the edge of the water. It's Nachshon. Why, he is taking some steps into the water. And I see some others beginning to follow him, children and elders too. And there goes Moses. He is lifting his staff. And I can see a glimmer of light on the distant shore. Hold our hands, because we have each other. We have our community. And we will not leave anyone behind. We will carry those who cannot walk on their own. We will carry our children, and together we will have courage to take steps into the unknown with the hope of the freedom in our future.
Cindy, thank you so much. What a beautiful telling. I don't know that I have ever gotten teary hearing in the Magid section of the Passover Seder before. That was absolutely beautiful. And in this section of the Seder comes the 4 questions. Let us rejoice in being a free people, encouraged to ask questions of all kinds. Please join in singing. Ma nishtana halayla hazeh mikol halelot, mikol halelot, shebechol halelot anu ochlin chametz umatzah, chametz umatzah. Halayla hazeh kulo matzah. Halayla hazeh kulo matzah. Shebechol halelot anu ochlin sha'ar yirakot, sha'ar yirakot. Halayla hazeh maror, maror. Halayla hazeh maror, maror. Shebechol halelot ein anu matbilin afilu pa'am echad, afilu pa'am echad. Halayla hazeh shetei ve'amim. Halayla hazeh shetei ve'amim. Last one. Shebechol halelot anu ochlin ben yoshvin uvein mesubin, ben yoshvin uvein mesubin. Halayla hazeh kulanu mesubin. Halayla hazeh kulanu
Next, we want to show you a video of some answers to 4 different questions. We asked our members to respond to the following. What new item will you add to your Seder plate to represent what you have been through this year? What new food will you eat on this night to symbolize the challenges of this year? What new question will you ask based on your experiences this year? And what new wisdom will you take with you into the world as you emerge from Mitzrayim, the narrow place of this pandemic? And this is what people said.
Okay, so what will we have on our Seder plate this year that is different from all other years?
I think we should add a mask.
A mask, she says. Why a mask? We only use masks for Purim. This is Passover. We don't need a mask for Passover.
Well, it symbolizes that we've been in our house for so long.
That we've been prisoners in our homes for a whole year, plus by the time this airs. Yes, that is it.
What would I like to add to the Seder plate? I'd like to add some kimchi in addition to the horseradish that we now have. Why? As a visible display to our Asian American friends and families, a display of our support, our compassion, our understanding, and most of all, our shared humanity.
So I wrote 2 haikus to explain why. The first one is called Bosk Pear. Bosk pear on our Seder plate, succulent and sweet, like us, aging well at home. The second is called Slow Down. The COVID-19 slowdown, like sap to syrup, boils life down to what counts, love.
I'll put glitter on the Seder plate because the world shines. I would put a carrot on the Seder plate because COVID has been long and hard but a little bit sweet. I would put a Sour Patch Kid on the Seder plate because it represents how COVID can be sweet but also sour.
Mayim, what food would you add to the Seder plate to represent what you have been through this past year?
An avocado, like this one. Hi, my name is Ozzy the avocado because its skin isolates it from the world.
This year at Passover, I am going to put a shot glass for everybody at the table to represent how glad we are that the shots came out as soon as they did for the vaccine, and also to represent having to watch so many shots go in people's arms on TV for 4 or 5 months.
And I'm considering whether I can get away with putting a piece of bologna on the Seder plate to represent the suffering we've all had to do with the bologna we've heard the last year, or really the last 4 years.
But you're not going to really do it, right?
Probably not.
I am going to ask my kids how excited they are to get to go to school 5 days a week. And I bet their answer this year is going to be way different and far more excited than if I had asked them this question a couple of years ago.
I have learned how to be more resilient as I watched my children and grandchildren maneuver through the trials of the pandemic. That's the lesson to question number 4. Hag Sameach and Hag Pesach Sameach to all with love.
When I think about the story of the Exodus and I visualize the people crossing the sea, of course, we know how the story ends. We know that it all turns out okay, but they didn't. They were just left with fear and I think hope. I've thought about that image a lot of people crossing the sea and what that must have been like with the waters rising on either sides of them, these big walls of water. And it reminded me of what we're going through and how we had to have hope that sometimes when you're in what seems like a really scary place, the best you can do is to maintain hope. And that's a lesson that I will carry forward.
Something that I'm going to take into next year or whenever the coronavirus is over is that bad things can happen, but they always turn good in the end.
In this year of COVID, I've learned about resilience from our Shir Tikvah community. We have adapted and we have thrived under adverse conditions. But that's what Jews have been doing for 3,500 years. This time, with the help of Zoom, we even solved the Shabbat service's parking problem. I have no idea what our post-COVID future will bring, but I'm confident that our community will survive, strong and connected. Thank you all for this lesson.
The Four Children provides an opportunity to talk about modern day labels and how we think of people with varying strengths and weaknesses. Can any child really be summarized with one terse label? Can any individual be described so succinctly, wise, wicked, simple, and not knowing how to ask?
What does wisdom look like? The wise child comes first in our reading of the Four Children, as if to say that this child is ranked above all others, that being wise is an attribute to which all others should aspire. But what does it mean to be wise? Does it mean that the child is smart only in traditional ways, i.e., they do well in school? Is this definition of wise too narrow? What might we miss about the wise child when we only think of book smarts or the ability to adapt to a particular teacher's method of instruction? What might we miss about the other children who are not considered wise in this traditional way?
Is this child really simple? Sometimes children understand more than they are able to convey. Individuals with auditory processing difficulties or other learning disabilities, speech language delays, anxiety, and more may be perceived as simple, when in fact, it is the adults in their lives that are too simple or one-dimensional in their quest for information output. Everyone learns differently. One person could be a visual learner while another may prefer hearing information or talking it through. Still, others need to learn by moving and feeling. How do you learn best? How might you discover what the simple child knows if you think about how he or she or they learn best? How does Passover take into account all different types of learners? When do you feel most engaged in the rituals of the Seder? Do all of the people at your Seder feel the same way? What does this tell us about individual learning styles?
Are they wicked, or do they have needs that are not being addressed? There is a function behind every behavior. What is this wicked child trying to tell the adults in his or her life? No child misbehaves in order to become someone's least favorite person. So what else is going on? Are the child's basic physical needs, sleep and nutrition, being met? Is the child overwhelmed by sensory input? Is the child having difficulty understanding what is expected of them? Do the adults' expectations match the child's current level of functioning? Is the child trying to show you that something is too hard or too easy? Is the child socially successful or the target of bullying, teasing, or simply being left out? It is only by identifying the function behind a behavior that we can turn the wicked child's actions into productive, acceptable behaviors.
Are they simple, or do they have trouble processing information? The child who doesn't know how to ask is the last of the four children mentioned, as though they are ranked at the bottom of the class. How do we perceive people who are different than ourselves? What would our interactions look like if we took a moment to recognize that everyone is created B'Tselem Elohim, in God's image before we passed a judgment. Asking a question and being verbal are not mutually exclusive, though too often we see them as just that. What tools can we provide for children who need help communicating their thoughts? How can we help them formulate their questions? What would somebody miss out on about you if they formed all of their opinions within seconds of meeting you? What would you want that person to know about you? As we rejoice at our deliverance from slavery, we acknowledge that our freedom is hard-earned. We regret that our freedom came at the cost of Egyptian suffering, for we are all human beings made in the image of God. I invite you to refill your glass, and we will pour out a drop of wine for each of the plagues as we recite them. Some people have the custom of putting their pinky rather than trying to pour one drop at a time. These are the 10 plagues which God brought down on the Egyptians and which we mourn today. I'll start with the Hebrew and then move into the English. Please join me as you dip your wine onto your plate, lowering that cup that symbolizes our freedom. Dam, blood. Tzfardea, frogs. Kinim, lice. Arov, beasts. Dever, cattle disease. Shechin, boils. Barad, hail. Arbe, locusts. Choshech, darkness. Makat bechorot, the death of the firstborn. The Egyptians needed 10 plagues because after each one they were able to come up with excuses and explanations rather than change their behavior. Could we be making the same mistakes? Make up your own list. What are the plagues in your life? What are the plagues in our world today? What behaviors do we need to change to fix them?
And we invite you to write those into the chat if you'd like. And while we are doing so, 10 plagues in Egypt land. You are invited to sing this out with gusto and maybe dance a little bit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 plagues in Egypt land. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 plagues in Egypt land. Blood in the water made the river run red. 10 plagues in Egypt land. Pharaoh should have listened to what God said. 10 plagues in Egypt land. Frogs were jumping in Pharaoh's hair. 10 plagues in Egypt land. Pharaoh didn't like it, but the frogs didn't care. 10 plagues in Egypt land. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 plagues in Egypt land. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 plagues in Egypt land. Creepy, crawly, itchy lice. 10 plagues in Egypt land. Mess with the Holy One, you better think twice. 10 plagues in Egypt land. Filthy flies, so dirty and vile. 10 plagues in Egypt land. Not exactly Pharaoh style. 10 plagues in Egypt land. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 plagues in Egypt land. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 plagues in Egypt land. The cattle and the horses and the oxen died. 10 plagues in Egypt land. I won't give up, old Pharaoh cried. 10 plagues in Egypt land. Boils and blisters on his skin. 10 plagues in Egypt land. Giving up, Pharaoh, you're never gonna win. 10 plagues in Egypt land. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 plagues in Egypt land. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 plagues 10 plagues in Egypt land hurt so much made Pharaoh cry. 10 plagues in Egypt land, swarms of locusts ate the crops. 10 plagues in Egypt land, hard-hearted Pharaoh just wouldn't stop. 10 plagues in Egypt land, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 plagues in Egypt land. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 plagues in Egypt land. Dark descended in the light of the day. 10 plagues in Egypt land, Pharaoh was lost, couldn't find his way. 10 plagues in Egypt land, firstborn, the final blow. 10 plagues in Egypt land, finally Pharaoh let the people go. 10 plagues in Egypt land, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 plagues in Egypt land. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 plagues in Egypt land.
B'chol dor vador hayav Adam lirot et atzmo, kilu hu yatsa mimitzrayim. In every generation, everyone is obligated to see themselves as though they personally left Egypt. The Seder reminds us that it was not only our ancestors whom God redeemed us too along with them. That's why the Torah says God brought us out from there in order to lead us to and give us the land promised to our ancestors. We praise God, ruler of everything, who redeemed us and our ancestors from Egypt, enabling us to reach this night matzah and bitter herbs. May we continue to reach future holidays in peace and happiness. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei pri hagafen. You may drink the second glass of wine.
So I am just feeling I'm feeling the Dayenu words. I was thinking as we were all logging on, it would have been enough if we just had this amazing technology to help us stay connected this year. We've had so many helpers to help us make this work. And then when we had our little tech crisis, we had people to ask to help us, and that would have been enough. And then there's over 100 people logged on, and that would have been enough. And then Dan Lieber told me that there's people here from 3 different continents joining us and from all over the country, and that would have been enough. And then Cindy's amazing story, and then the vid hug that just moved me to tears, and so grateful for the wise and deep and open-hearted people in our community. It would have been enough, all of those things. Ilu hotzianu mi Mitzrayim, hotzianu mi Mitzrayim, dayenu, 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 dayenu. Ilu natan lanu et ha-Shabbat, natan lanu et ha-Shabbat, dayenu, 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 dayenu. It also would have been enough just to read the amazing chats coming through, your thoughts on the Seder, on the questions that we've been asking. So inspiring. Ilu natan lanu et ha-Torah, natan lanu et ha-Torah, dayenu, 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 dayenu,
We continue with the blessing over the meal and the matzah, the familiar, I'll get all the letters out one of these days. The familiar Motzi Blessing marks the formal start of a meal. Because we are using matzah instead of bread, we add a blessing of celebrating the mitzvah of eating matzah at this season. So I invite you to hold up a piece of matzah if you haven't yet. There we go. I see these, and the screen is filling with this. And please join me in the Motzi. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. We praise you, God, sovereign of everything, who brings bread from the land. And before we eat it, we say the blessing over eating matzah as opposed to bread. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al achilat matzah. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, source of everything in the universe, who made us holy with obligations, commanding us to eat this matzah. And now you may eat your matzah.
I invite you all to get whatever you are using to remind you of bitterness tonight. I'm using some slightly expired horseradish, but still pretty bitter. With the taste of bitterness just before our lips, we remind ourselves of the bitterness that led to the enslavement of our ancestors in Egypt. Tonight, we force ourselves to experience the stinging pain of the maror so that we should remember that appallingly, even centuries later, the bitterness of xenophobia still oppresses millions of people around the world, forcing them to flee their homes. As we taste the bitter herbs, we vow not to let the words of hatred pass through our own lips and to root out intolerant speech wherever we may hear it, so that no one should fall victim to baseless hatred. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al achilat maror. We praise God, ruler of everything, who made us holy through obligations, commanding us to eat bitter herbs.
We continue with the making of the Hillel sandwich. Rarely in life is something all bitter or all sweet. And this sandwich reminds us in each moment to make room for all that is. So you're going to layer a piece of matzah with the maror, the bitterness, the charoset, the sweetness. Cover it back up with another piece of matzah. And try to make room in your palate and your life for all that is, the bitter and the sweet, as the wise children in our video taught us, just like a Sour Patch Kid, bitter and sweet. Don, I'm going to call an audible and skip to the next slide. There you go. Thanks. If the afikomen has been hidden in your house, we invite you to start your hunt, your search for it if it has not yet been found.
And if you are not searching, please join me in singing the afikomen mambo. I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna find it. Gonna find the afikomen. Every year at Pesach time, we eat the matzah and we drink the wine. We ask 4 questions one by one. But before the Seder is done, I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna find it. Gonna find the afikomen. We eat charoset and we dip karpas. We tell the story of the Exodus. The bitter herbs, they make my eyes go cross. But when I find the afikomen, I'm the boss. 'Cause I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna find it. Gonna find the afikomen.
At a Seder, there is a cup of wine left on the table for the prophet Elijah. Toward the end of the night, the door is opened for Elijah, symbolizing that all are welcome at the Seder. All can take refuge. In this spirit, consider symbolically setting aside a table setting or opening the door to the 60 million refugees and displaced people around the world still waiting to be free. For all those who deserve to be welcomed in, not as strangers, but as fellow human beings.
Amen. And we invite you to go open a door if you'd like for Eliyahu, and we sing Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hatishbi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Hagiladi, Bimhera ve'yamenu, Yavo eleinu, Mashiach ben David, Mashiach ben David, Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hatishbi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Hagiladi.
On our Seder table, we place a cup of spring water, living water, Mayim Chaim, Miriam's cup, linked to water from the time she stood watching over her brother Moses at the Nile, as Cindy so beautifully reminded us. Miriam, the prophetess, led our people in song and dance at the crossing of the sea. She sings in response to water, and a miraculous well of water travels with the people in response to her song, forming a kind of song line through the wilderness. Created on the twilight of the eve of the first Shabbat, according to Pirkei Avot, Miriam's miraculous well followed Israel in their 40-year journey through the wilderness, healing and sustaining the people. Wherever it rolled, Aviva Gottlieb Zornberg teaches, it sang with an unheard music.
So we begin to conclude our second night Seder. And we want to thank you all for being here with us tonight to celebrate, to rejoice, to think, to question, to reflect. And we will conclude with words of prayer, of hope, and uplift written by Rabbi Naomi Levy with a few adaptations by us. We ask you to please respond with a hearty amen after each phrase. And when we conclude this final prayer, we invite you to stay on for a few extra minutes if you'd like to watch a very special music video. Chag Sameach, everyone. Next year in Jerusalem.
Next year in health.
Next year free from worry.
Next year with the entire world vaccinated.
Next year in person with family, friends, and community.
Next year feasting.
Next year rejoicing.
Next year in laughter.
Next year in love.
Next year filled with song and celebration.
Next year in abundance.
Next year in peace.
Next year in blessings. Amen.
Amen.
Miriam the prophet took her timbrel in her hand. Miriam the prophet took her timbrel in her hand, and all the women followed her, just as she had planned. Was a weaver of unique variety. The tapestry she wore was one who sang our history. With every strand and every thread she crafted her delight. A woman touched with spirit, she dances toward the light. And the women dancing with their timbrels followed Miriam as she sang her song. Sing the songs to one whom we've exalted. Miriam and the women dancing there all night long. Танцевали женщины, Miriam Bezali. When Miriam stood upon the shore and gazed across the sea, the wonder of this miracle she soon came to believe. Whoever thought the sea would part with an outstretched hand, and we would pass to freedom and march to the promised land. And the women dancing with their timbrels followed Miriam as she sang her song. Sing the song to one whom we've exalted. Miriam and the women dance and dance all night long. Miriam the prophet took a timbrel in her hand, and all the women followed her, just as she had planned. And Miriam raised her voice and song, she sang with praise and might. We just lived through a miracle. We're gonna dance tonight. Gonna dance tonight. And the women dancing with their timbrels followed Miriam as she sang her song. Sing the song to one whom we've exalted. Miriam and the women dance and dance the whole night long. And the women dancing with their timbrels followed Miriam as she sang her song. Sing the song to one whom we've exalted. Miriam and the women dance and dance the whole night long. They dance the whole night long. Miriam Banashim, Tanzavali Shekula. Miriam was a dance the whole night long.
Chag Sameach, everyone.
Chag Sameach to all.
Chag Sameach. That was fantastic.
Girl saying goodbye, right?
Chag
Sameach.
Chag Sameach to all.
Thank you.
Happy Passover!
Thank you. You Happy
Passover! Happy Passover, everyone.
Joseph, nice that you're in Israel. Is that a Jerusalem background you have there?
Yes.
Oh, nice.
Oh, cool.
This
Oh my God, and they had somebody who was in Jerusalem.
Oh,
no. Bad.
We can all wish.
It's over.
Next year.
Next year, Hashanah Haba.
Have a good meal.
Have a good meal, everybody.
Judy. Passover. That was wonderful.
Passover. Thank you.
So good to be here. Thank you.
Thank you,
everyone.
Larry, it's nice to have you here.
Bye.
Thank you. Awesome.
Thank you.
It was great.
Great job.
This was incredibly special.
Incredibly special. Second that.
Nice.
Thank you, Cindy.
Well on that.
Yeah. Seder in the family. That was perfect. Perfect.
It's,
Hag Sameach, Andre. Thanks.
you.
Yeah.